What's up, Flannelverse? We are back for week 3 of the NFL season. This is Thursday Night Football, Bills and Dolphins. I'm going to be breaking this down with Adam. ShipMyMoney, Scherer. We're going to be going position by position, starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, and kickers. Kickers are on this slate. And then we will take any questions you have before we get out of here. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Nice to get back to football. I like this time of year where like you have a couple weeks of information. You're not like guessing quite as much at what teams are going to do. I've never been somebody that in any sport, whether it's basketball, football, whatever, like where you have to make input assumptions. I've never been somebody that thinks I have like a great edge at knowing what teams are going to do before I see it. So I always like this time of year. I feel like this is when I start to have more success, when I can look at what's happened the first couple of weeks and then kind of make more informed opinions on like what I think continues, what doesn't. So it to me is a more fun time of year than like week 1, where you're just like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they do this, maybe they do that. Who knows?
Yeah, this is kind of like the sweet spot for me. Also, I hate the beginning of the season. Also, just from a content perspective, like when I was just playing, it was like, yeah, it's just as fun because you're excited, whatever. But doing content on it, it's like I don't know which defenses are good, which defenses are bad. And then after week 1, it's like I have a 1-game sample size, and every team has only played against one other team, so we don't know if it's because of that matchup or whatever. I hate the beginning of the year. Week 3 is kind of where you start to enter the sweet spot. I really love like 4, 5, 6, 7, onward. But we're getting closer to that period where we have the information that we need. And then there comes a point where like teams, it's like, are they going to sit their starters? Like what are the team's motivations at this point? But right now we know the team's motivations. We know what they've done so far. So yeah,
I need to put it on the schedule right now that I'm taking off week 18 and not doing projections.
Smart guy. Is there a backup for you at Run the Sims for week 18? Okay. So yeah, I guess just don't plan on using Run the Sims week
Davis,
18.
You're gonna be busy week 18.
Yeah, right, Davis. Yeah, good. Have fun with that, Davis. Now got to start with a question, of course. Tonight, would you rather have 100 teams cash or 25 teams cash?
Yeah, I'll take 100.
We're of course making fun of a conversation going on Twitter right now that is absurd. In that, to me, it's just so the first tweet was, it's a best ball tweet. A person that has 100 teams that make it to the second round of Best Ball Mania is more likely to get a team is less likely to get a team to the finals than a team that advances 25 teams in Best Ball Mania was the original tweet. And then, as far as I can tell, I think that people have added a lot of stipulations to it to make the conversation a little bit different. I think I've missed some steps along the way, because now I'm seeing people talk about 80 teams or 75 teams versus 25, and I'm totally lost in the conversation. But to me, that just goes to show you the absurdity of the conversation. Is just like, yeah, you can't run numbers on this because everybody's just adding stipulations. Oh, it's all the exact same team, or it's diversified teams. I don't know. What do you think of the conversation?
Yeah, like I think there's obviously more nuance to it than people, including myself. Like I've made fun of it, and I have definitely intentionally made that argument sound dumber and less nuanced than it actually was. Yeah. But like I think, because if you take it to the extreme, right? Like if somehow you did draft the same exact best ball team 100 different times, then probably you'd rather have like 25 diverse teams. I'm not going to say definitely, because you do still have pod luck, which is different. Like I've seen people compare it to having a train in DFS, and it's not the exact same thing because you're not playing against yourself until week 17. So there's like some number, I guess, where like if you could have a team that projected 100 points better than any of those other 25 teams, you probably would just want to run that 100 in 100.
Oh, 100%. It's 100 points.
So like there's some number there, but probably you'd prefer the unique teams. But I feel like there's like a hyper fixation when people talk about best ball with 1 or 2 players. Like, and when you compare that to DFS, there's plenty of times where you play a DFS slate and you have 80% exposure to what is just like clearly the best play. And that's just like the correct amount to have. So the idea that like, oh, well, you wouldn't actually want 100 lineups that have, the guy that was like, Saquon Barkley, the guy that was the best player, like, doesn't make any sense, because chances are, barring injury or anything, they also are still the best play in week 15, week 16, whatever. And you just have a lot of them like at, at high ownership, but not
Right.
necessarily as high as like it would be if you could draft that week. And you still have 17 other spots on your roster that are almost guaranteed to be different because you drafted at different times, because you drafted from different positions. So even if you have overlap between a few players or 5 players or 6 players, like, which even that is crazy. You don't have the same 6 players on 100 teams.
Yeah.
It's, I think, like, in practicality, you just didn't draft teams that are that similar, even if you have high exposures to players, for this to even be a conversation where you would possibly think you're going to make the finals more with 1/4 of the lineups than if you had 100. Like, there are like example, like you could create a scenario where maybe that is the case, but it's just not one that is ever coming up in real life.
Right. It's not a real life thing, because look through like the teams that have the highest advance rates, or just look through like the most condensed teams. None of them are like duping each other or coming anywhere close to duping each other, because you're drafting against each other. It's not even like DFS, where if you wanted to have the same 12 players on every team, you could. Like, I mean,
Right.
unless you're reaching a ton, you're probably not going to have the same 12 players on all of your teams. Your teams are going to be fairly diversified. Now, to get 100 teams through, it is likely that you're pretty consolidated on 6 of the best plays. Like, you might have six players that just like carry you, they crush their expectation. But like you said, like, they're probably still going to be good in week 15. We're not adding a stipulation that like they all get hurt or something like that. So like,
Right.
you're probably still just going to have really good players on your teams in the playoffs.
Like the DFS equivalent here, I guess, for that would be like, in the Millie this week, the field is only allowed to play the highest projected players a maximum 30%. Do you want to play 80% or do you want to play 30%?
right.
Like,
If you're allowed
just
to,
take,
you're the
I'll
one
take a lot
person.
of them.
Yeah, give me all of the highest. Yeah, it's an absurd conversation. Pretty funny. As Waylon says, yeah, I'm clearly missing some context here, because on the surface this argument sounds preposterous. I'm not sure that you are missing context. I think it's just a preposterous argument that a lot of people are buying into. But like you said, like I said, like, yeah, you can add enough like factors to make it less preposterous. You can be like, well, what if it's all the exact same team? Then yeah, sure, then maybe you want the 25 instead of the top 100. I think you would in that case, if it's the exact same team, unless it projects significantly better than the other teams. I would rather have the 25 diversified than the 100 that are all the exact same team. But it's just, you're not getting that in any reasonable, like, that's not happening unless you're really, reaching multiple rounds for all of your players. Yeah, it's a strange argument that's going around that is apparently, people are making it more nuanced and making it a more interesting conversation. But just on the surface, yeah, you'd rather have 100 teams advance than 25, and you're more likely to get a team to the finals.
Also, it wasn't even an ROI take. So, because that's the other thing that like has come up. Somebody said to me on Twitter something about portfolio diversification and DFS, comparing it to that. It was literally a raw number take. It was, you on average will have more teams of advance if you have 25 than if you have 100. So it didn't even get into the trade-offs between diversification and ROI.
Right.
It was just a raw numbers thing. But even that would be wrong or different. Like, nobody, when you talk about diversification in DFS, nobody says like you're going to win more often if you diversify your 30 lineups than the people that are playing 150 lineups, because
Right.
in those 150 lineups, they have more of Derrick Henry than you do. Like, that's not it. It's, if you diversify and sacrifice a little bit of ROI in the same number of lineups, your risk of ruin goes down. It's not like you win more often by playing less lineups that are more diverse or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
It's anyway, we don't need to continue talking about it, because it is an absurd conversation that people are having on Twitter. It's people have brought it up multiple times on just like, are you guys going to talk about this on the show? So I did feel the need to bring it up. I think that Liam, just like in his original tweet, didn't add enough context to make it an interesting hypothetical. Like, it was just kind of you'd advance more if you have 25 than 100, without adding all the context that was like, would make that a reasonable statement. If you add enough, then sure, that could potentially become reasonable at some point.
It read to me, and like, I've done this plenty, like, when you have a thought and it's kind of an interesting one, and before you like go down each branch in your head, you just put it out there, and then you look back at it 5 minutes later and go, oh my God, I disagree with myself. Like, I've done that a lot. And then
Yeah.
a lot of times I'll just stand by it because it's fun. But like, that's what it read as to me, was like, for a second, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then you think about it for like 4 more seconds, and you're just like, what the fuck did I just say?
It's more like, what would the number of lineups be where it's like the
Right.
diversification becomes, I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway. That would have been an interesting conversation because like I said, there is some point, like how overlapped your lineups have to be. What's the projection difference have to be? Like nobody wants to get into that math.
Yeah.
But that would at least be like an interesting thought conversation, I guess, because there is some point.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to shit all over Liam here. Liam is a friend of mine. I like Liam. It's just it's that particular, just the way he laid it out to me was kind of absurd. I was going to add one more thought about it, but I'm blanking on what it was. So anyway, we can move on and not talk about the how many lineups need to be diversified. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like you and I are also both more on the side of like diversifying lineups too. It's the funny thing is like we're both more on the side of like, yeah, I'm gonna have a wide variety of lineups. I'm not just gonna have 80% of one player and be like, this is my edge. I have 80% of this player, or anything like that. So like we're both like pro diversifying lineups.
I guess it's why I feel so confident in the idea that like your 100 lineups just cannot be that overlapped. I don't intentionally, for the most part, I don't intentionally like manipulate my player exposures because I don't have to. And like by the time I'm done drafting, I think my highest owned players are generally like 30%. And I'm not going in like every 2 or 3 days and saying, oh, I got a lot of Devontae Adams this week. I need to move him a few spots back in my ranks. It's just literally by the time I do 150 drafts, the way that they work out, the way that ranks naturally change with injury news and all of that, I just don't get more than like 30% of anybody. So,
right.
It would be really, really, really hard to have actual 100 teams that are really that close to each other.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna move on and talk about the game tonight. Bills and I gotta rearrange things. It appears. Nope, that didn't do it. We can just leave that over Adam's face. You guys are cool with that, right? Let's see.
The one female viewer in chat just left.
Yeah, sure she did. There we go. I think I got it. That's good enough. There we go. All right, we're gonna be going quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. Maybe take some questions along the way. But let's get into it. Starting with the quarterbacks, we have Tua Tagovailoa projected for 41% flex ownership, 6% captain ownership. And then we have Josh Allen at 51% flex ownership, 35% captain ownership. We can start with the Tua side. Adam, how much are you getting of Tua Tagovailoa?
So for the first time so far, I'm actually not getting a lot of quarterback captains, which is nice. I have 64% at flex though, so I do have a lot overall at 9,400. I only have 3% at captain, which is about half the field. I've been getting Tua in general this year, and I was kind of talking about it with you before the show. I think that it's good. It's just still volatile because in part Miami's defense is so bad. What you've seen so far this year is Miami having trouble to even run plays offensively because their defense can't get off the field. And obviously that's not likely to be solved against the Bills. But what I do think has kind of gone overlooked a little bit is if you go back to last year when Tua was active, Miami was a very pass-heavy offense. They played at a reasonable pace. They have a relatively concentrated target tree. And all of that is still true this year. Through the first 2 games, I'm trying to pull this back up now. Through the first 2 games, obviously the overall plays haven't been there because, again, they can't get off the field. They had like 11 plays or 12 plays or something absurd in the first half against New England last week. But through the first 2 weeks for Miami, they've run the ball like 30% of the time. They're throwing a lot. You have a relatively concentrated target tree, and you have good pass catchers. You have Achane, you have Hill, you have Waddle. So he doesn't rush, which obviously sucks, but he's also not expensive. So I'm fine getting to a lot of Tua. The downside, of course, is just he doesn't rush, and he probably won't get that many plays today either because Miami can't stop Buffalo.
Yeah, 13th in terms of pass rate over expectation, and now they're playing the Bills, so just have to assume the passing goes up even more against the Bills. It's tough because there are so many stars on this slate that I wrote in my expert server that I anticipate being underweight to Tua Tagovailoa. But we'll see when I actually run the Sims if I get there, but that's kind of my instinct because we have so many strong plays at other positions. And then Josh Allen is such a smash. But we'll see. I mean, that seems like fine ownership at 47%. A lot of ways to stack them up. You can obviously include Devin Achane as a pass catcher. To me, if you're playing Tua, you want to stack him up regardless of where he is in your lineup. And if you have him in the captain spot, you want him to be stacked with multiple pass catchers, which again could include Devin Achane. Is that what you're seeing in your sim so far, Adam?
Yeah, that's what I would expect. Yeah, so like the first Tua captain lineup I see is with Achane. It's with 4 pass catchers. Tua with 4 more pass catchers.
But you said you're not getting to a ton of Tua at captain, right?
Yeah, I only have like 3% Tua at captain. And keep in mind, Achane clearly a pass catcher for the purposes of this conversation as well.
Yep, definitely. On the other side, we have Josh Allen. He's 12,400 projected for 51% flex ownership, 35% captain ownership. Now, your ownership numbers are high enough that it starts to be like, I actually don't know if I'm going to smash him if these are the ownership numbers. I'm guessing it's going to be lower everywhere else. I still think I'd probably just play him even at these ownership numbers because Josh Allen is just so good. But how much you get into of Josh Allen?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think that's kind of what it is. I used these ownership numbers for the lineups I ran before the show too, so I don't have like the aggregate that I usually use. If that's lower, obviously, I want a lot of Josh Allen. With the ownership numbers that we have right now, I didn't get that much. I got 37% at flex. I only got 4% at captain.
Okay.
And that's, with that 35% captain projection, it just becomes, I think at that number, especially when you start factoring in dupes as well, kind of like, they obviously project really well, but there are other spots I can get to in this game. You mentioned that there are a lot of talented players in this game. The entire Miami side comes with the very big caveat that they easily could suck, but they have players that are good. And the Bills obviously kind of to some extent have like less appealing players, but they're obviously the better offense. Less appealing individual players, but collectively the better offense. So there are plenty of other ways you can go if Josh Allen is actually going to get 35% at captain. So obviously would love to have a lot of Josh Allen. You get the rushing upside, you get the rushing touchdown equity. You do get an offense that, unlike Miami, is not super condensed. So Josh Allen is like the easiest way to make sure that you are getting Buffalo points, Buffalo touchdowns. He is the one guy that you can be really confident, is going to be scoring one way or the other. So clearly he looks good, but at the projected ownership, I am below the field and just taking more shots at other guys.
So you're not actually as far off as, RG has that 54% in the flex, 25% at captain. So honestly, pretty close as far as the ownership goes. So I'm still surprised that you're getting as low as you are. That seems kind of risky. But you're still getting what you say 4% at captain.
Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting, because I was just double checking it, it's not with a low projection on Josh Allen either.
Right.
He's in the sim projections, he's at like 25.5 fantasy points. In the algo driven projections, he's at like 24. So I have a high projection on Josh Allen here, which that's like the first thing that I would want to look at if I were going into lock with these lineups. People have asked me kind of what do I do with my player exposures a million times. And that's like the first thing I would look. If I look and it's like, oh, Josh Allen's only projected for 21 fantasy points, I don't want to not play Josh Allen because I have I'm randomly a 1.5, 2 points lower than market on him. But if I look and he's projected for probably too many fantasy points, if anything, and I'm still not getting to him, then at that point, it's just like, okay, I guess I'm just not getting much Josh Allen today.
Yeah. As far as stacking goes with Josh Allen, I don't really need to stack him regardless of where he's in the lineup. I think generally I'm going to want to have a pass catcher if I have him in the captain spot, but not even going to force that. If I were using an optimizer, are you getting too much naked Josh Allen or naked in the captain spot in particular? I guess you're not getting too much in general, but when you look at those lineups.
Where he's in captain, so here's pass catchers. I really just don't have that much at captain. He is perfectly fine to play naked, whether it's at captain or in flex, because again, he's just individually such a large percentage of touchdowns and has such high rushing touchdown equity that there's just plenty of ways this game can play out where you don't need any of his pass catchers, especially when you think about it too, with what's on the other side, where like maybe Josh Allen throws 1 touchdown, runs for 2, ends up being your optimal captain. you don't even need the receiver he threw the touchdown to, though, because then like Miami just gets a bunch of PPR points playing from behind with Washington, Hill, Waddle, etc. There's so many ways this can play out where it's like Josh Allen, James Cook, which I'm not counting James Cook as a pass catcher, but I guess you could. You want Allen Cook, or you just want Allen by himself with whatever else. I don't think you need the 4 stacks. Obviously, it's fine to have them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly on. But yeah, James Cook, 41% route participation, 6 targets. Honestly, like as spread out as there, he's almost as much a pass catcher as any of their other pass catchers. I mean, outside of like Coleman, Shakir, I guess, maybe Kincaid, but it's like, yeah, 6 targets is like in this Bills offense is actually not that low relative to the receivers. So I think I would include James Cook as a potential pass catcher, but doesn't really matter because we're not even requiring pass catchers. Okay. Any other notes on quarterbacks?
No.
I did want to say I just changed the scroller below. You can get 10% off your first payment at Run the Sims using promo code Neil if you'd like to check it out. Highly recommend it. I had a profitable main slate on Sunday, which was pretty fun. Had enjoyed my nice diversified lineups. Had a nice sweat on FanDuel. Didn't quite get there in the end, but I finished top 70 in a contest with 150,000 some entries, and I just had 60 lineups in. So using Run the Sims, using the shady portfolio optimizer was very happy with my results on the main slate.
Imagine how high you would have finished if you'd only played 30 lineups.
I mean, that's a good point. I probably would have won the whole damn thing. So yeah, don't use Run the Sims, or no, use Run the Sims, but only play 30 lineups, I guess is what we're getting at. Highly recommend it. Obviously, results will vary. My results have varied, but in general, I've been pretty damn happy with how things are going so far using the product.
Yeah, and as always, important to remember that if you do well, Yuta, Davis, and I get the credit for very good projections. If you do poorly, you can blame Brick and Nerdy for the work they've done on the Sims.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely do not blame Neil if you follow my recommended process of making lineups. Okay, running backs. Dolphins, Devin Achane projected for 30% flex ownership, 14% captain ownership. I think that's where we need to start because the rest is a little bit murky with Jaylen Wright seeming to be coming back this week. But Achane, I don't think Achane's workload is affected by Jaylen Wright coming back. I think that's more going to affect the secondary running backs. How much are you getting to of Achane?
Way too much, but I have a lot of trouble not wanting to have him projected as the second highest scoring player behind Josh Allen. And I don't think that's like a hot take. I think that's pretty much industry standard. And it's just that even though he's a running back, like not that anybody is totally safe or has that high of a floor, but such a large percentage of his workload is through the passing game, and he's on the field just like every play now. And that's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's not sustainable long term. You wouldn't think for Achane to just constantly be out there. So it does feel risky projecting that. But at the same time, you have Mike McDaniel trying to keep his job. You have Miami trying to write everything. I don't anticipate that they're going to just take him off the field at this point. He had like 92% route participation last week. He's getting pretty much all of their carries, especially, when the game is relatively competitive. I'm with you. I don't think Jaylen Wright coming back is what really cuts into Achane. I assume that he just kind of takes the Ollie Gordon touches, which weren't that many anyway. Maybe they go to like a 3. They could, I guess, have like a 3 running back split, but just the fact that they weren't using Gordon a lot makes me think that's not going to be the case because they just had the opportunity to actually have Gordon be involved and they chose not to. So it seems more likely to me that they would just make Jaylen Wright the backup to Achane now, or not, and it's still Gordon.
Yeah,
but either way, like, right. I don't think that I'm not super worried that they go to some sort of like split that takes things away from Achane. So I think Achane looks really good. He's obviously heavily involved in the passing game. They use, short passes to him as an extension of the running game. And in PPR, you're just getting, it's like getting a point for handoffs basically. So yeah, he looks really, really good. You saw it week 1 where Miami got torched and he still got there because even though they couldn't do anything offensively, they're just throwing him the ball constantly, playing from behind. So I think as safe as a skill player can be in a 1-game football sample.
Yeah, agreed. He just looks like a fantastic play. Obviously expensive, 10,800, but worth the price tag. As you can see here, through 2 games, 18 carries, so 9 carries per game, and 14 targets, 7 targets per game. So the carries, pretty light for a starting running back, getting as much usage as he is, but then the targets are pretty awesome for Devin Achane. Also worth noting that so far, this has been a really strong matchup. I don't really know what to make of it because the two teams the Bills have played are the Ravens and the Jets, who both have a rushing quarterback and just a strong running game in general. So I think it's just probably skewed because of the matchups. But it is worth noting that the Bills defense has allowed 338 rushing yards through 2 weeks, which is the second most in the NFL, 6.8 yards per carry through 2 weeks. Again, I don't think that that's going to hold. I think that's a matter of who they have played against so far. But the Bills defense will be missing Ed Oliver, who is so far PFF's top-ranked defensive tackle at defending the run in the NFL this season. Now, he wasn't nearly that good last year by that metric, but worth noting that so far this year, the top, which surprises me given how bad they've been against the run, but worth noting that Ed Oliver is missing the game. Oh, Josh points out Ed Oliver missed the last game as well. I missed that. I did not realize he missed the last game. That's a good note.
One other thing to point out too, with you just mentioned like the raw numbers for Achane in terms of carries and targets. Miami's run like 45 offensive plays per game this year, and you can say like I don't think they're going to get back to the 62 or whatever it was that they averaged last year when Tua was healthy because their defense isn't good enough. They're not going to average 45 plays per game for the season. It's going to get to like 54 or 55 at least.
Right.
So when you talk the raw numbers there, like eventually Miami, even if they don't fix the problem, they're going to at least stabilize to like, 55-ish plays per game.
Yeah. At some point that will normalize. Yeah. Which also kind of makes it harder to evaluate like their preferences given just how few plays they've run, like who, like in terms of like who's getting the targets. Like, well, it's a really small sample size because it's 2 games. And then even within those 2 games, they're just not running that many plays.
He does lead the team in targets per route run so far, edging out Hill and Waddle.
Yeah. Okay. Any other notes on so how much you get of Achane at captain?
I had 32% at captain. I have 63% at flex. I have him pretty much everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Looks like a great play.
I'm basically playing him like people are playing Josh Allen.
Are you getting to any Jaylen Wright, Ollie Gordon, any of the other running backs? So far, not much of a workload for the secondary running backs, and now it gets murkier. Kind of tough.
Right. I have some Alec Ingold at $400, like 10%. I assume that gets cut out. I have like one lineup with Jaylen Wright. I don't have Ollie Gordon. But yeah, I mean, even the Ingold thing, it's just 400 and hoping he like falls into the end zone or something, but that can hopefully go away by lock also.
Yeah, four targets through 2 games for a $400 player is not bad for Ingold. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That was also Tyreek Hill this summer said that he thinks that the Dolphins need to stop screwing around and giving Achane the ball at the goal line. Alec Ingold, you would think, could potentially get goal line carries. And I know they're talking about using other running backs. I don't know if it would be more likely to be Ingold or one of the other running backs if they were going to get a goal line carry, but sounded like Mike McDaniel was in agreement that Achane is probably not the answer there.
Yeah, I mean, also I mean, everybody in the summer just made the case that it was going to be Ollie Gordon, and then Mike McDaniel's just like, yeah, we're not going to give Ollie Gordon any touches.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, my assumption is still that they would use Achane. The other thing though, like, and it's mostly I think good for Achane, but maybe it's good for Ingold, maybe it's good for Gordon, maybe it's good for Wright, whatever. I guess we'll find out if Miami ever actually starts like scoring touchdowns. Tua's not going to be the goal line guy.
Yeah, true. Yeah, they're definitely not going to risk Tua, or I would think that they would not risk Tua. Although Mike McDaniel, on the hot seat probably, so maybe he will. All right. So yeah, probably not a ton of the other running backs. Maybe a little bit of Ingold. You could make the argument for if this game is a complete blowout, then maybe we see some Ollie Gordon in late in the game taking over, getting some of those carries. But more likely they'd more likely be down, so they'd be probably just trying to pass it. I don't know. It's a little bit thin. I'll think about playing some of probably Ollie Gordon would be my next favorite, but yeah, it's not going to be a huge part of any of my lineups. Okay. Moving on to the Bills. James Cook absolutely just crushing fantasy this year. 10,600 projected for 33% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. The Bills are pretty big favorites here. How much are you getting to of James Cook?
27% at flex, 9 at captain. So pretty close to where we have the field. He has been obviously very, very good. He's clearly been the lead back there. You haven't had Ray Davis have too big of a role behind him. Davis did have a bigger workload last week than he did week 1 in terms of market share. But it's just been, explosive plays from James Cook, which isn't surprising. And he has plenty of touchdown upside just being on this offense. Obviously, he does have less rushing touchdown upside than a lot of running backs, just given that in terms of percentages, because you do have Josh Allen in the red zone around the goal line stealing rushing touchdowns, but still obviously a very, very good play. He's involved in the passing game, like you said, playing, a Miami defense that hasn't been able to stop anybody so far. So I think he looks good. I, again, obviously have a lot more Achane than I do Cook, but I think he looks good.
Yeah, Achane just $200 more expensive than Cook. This Dolphins defense has allowed 278 rushing yards, which is the 8th most in the NFL, but just 4 yards per carry, which is 20th most. I think in general, we're all in agreement that it's not going to be a great defense, and the Bills should be able to put up a lot of points here. James Cook in a good spot on the favorite. Yeah, seems like a pretty good play here. And then these are the more interesting secondary running backs because they could benefit more from a blowout. Specifically, I would think it would be Ray Davis would be the one to come in the case of a blowout, but Ty Johnson always a little bit interesting to me also, especially when he's coming in at relatively low ownership. So you've got Ray Davis coming in at 10% flex ownership, no captain ownership. Ty Johnson at you have Ty Johnson way higher in terms of flex, I think 19% flex ownership, 0% captain ownership. I want to double check. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But that seems like the ownership you've got here is higher. Okay, 8% at RG. So pretty significant difference in Ty Johnson's projected ownership. I would guess he's going to be lower, but maybe we just don't have many awesome value options, so it could come in higher than expected. How much are you getting to of the backups?
I have 10% Davis, 6% Ty Johnson. But like you said, that number does seem a little high to me at 19%. And if it does come down, then obviously you're going to be more interested. We know that Ty Johnson does have a role as a passing down back. It's not like, Cook isn't involved, so it's not as big a role as it, potentially could be. But there are just those games throughout the year where Ty Johnson does sort of take over out of the backfield, just kind of gets hot, starts making plays as a pass catcher, and certainly has a ceiling for $1,600.
Yeah, as I recall, I think I did. It was on the first Showdown slate. They played the Ravens, and I pointed. I think Ty Johnson had 5 games with at least double-digit fantasy points last year. No, I think he had 3. So at 1,600, if those are your odds, seems pretty good for Ty Johnson. I think he had some where it was just short also. But on so far in the year, not super involved. Only 4 carries and 2 targets through 2 games. But I think that's just a sample size thing. I would expect those numbers to come up.
Yeah, he's still running routes. He's at like 36% on average.
Yep. Fantasy Points has him at 31%. Again, looking at different numbers here. So you're using a different source here. But yeah, in that kind of range as far as routes for Ty Johnson. Seems like honestly, I think both are. And it sounds like you're getting to a little bit of both. I think they're both pretty strong plays. Are you getting to, can you see if you're getting them with James Cook? Do you see any of those lineups popping up for you?
So I saw at least one lineup at the top of my set that had Cook and Ray Davis, I believe.
Yeah, that would be my expectation, that they can be played together, because I mean, first of all, they're all kind of used throughout the game, but wouldn't be that surprising to see Cook just smash in the first half, and then at some point in the second half, it's a blowout. One of the others comes in, gets more work. So yeah, I think that's actually a pretty strong play to play them together. Also, the salaries work well together. With Cook being so expensive, then you need some salary saving. I think Ty Johnson comes in, saves you some salary and probably a little bit of ownership with the combinatorial aspect as well.
Yeah, I see one lineup right now just as I scroll through. James Cook captain with Ray Davis as well. Like, I think you can do that. And I mean, this is obviously getting like really specific, but in talking about just ways the game could play out and going back to how unable to get off the field Miami has been so far and how many plays they're giving up, you can even get into that situation where like James Cook just kind of gets, he's having a really good game, but he kind of just gets gassed at some point in a drive because they're on play number 100 of the drive. And Ray Davis comes in and, produces, or Ty Johnson comes in and produces. So like, even from that angle, you can make the case for, multiple running backs where it's just, they run so many plays potentially in this game that just guys get, more than one guy gets there.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, often the case for playing multiple running backs on the same team. I think, and I think it especially makes a lot of sense in this game where that's kind of the expectation that the Bills are just going to be able to run all over them. Fun fact from Hulk Smash Potatoes here says in 3 of the last 4 games versus the Dolphins, a Bills running back has had a 30+ yard reception, one of Cook, Davis, or Johnson. That is a fun little fact there. Right? And I did not fact check it, to be clear, but I trust Hulk Smash Potatoes. Okay. Anything else on running backs?
No.
All right, let's talk wide receivers. And we'll start with the Dolphins. Again, Tyreek Hill projected for 35% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. Jaylen Waddle, I believe, is still questionable. Limited in practice on Wednesday. Oh, I didn't even know you guys had these notes here. That's cool. Limited in practice on Wednesday heading into week 3. So, I think true questionable. Is that your read also, that he's like a truly questionable, or do you think he's likely to play?
I haven't paid too much attention to it, but I assume he's questionable. What notes are you talking
about? Do you not see it when I put my?
I wasn't looking. Oh, okay.
Over the injured guy. Yeah,
I didn't realize that was there, but it is on the back end spreadsheet.
Nice. Well, it shows up for me. Shows up for the rest of us too.
Cool.
So how much are you getting to of Tyreek Hill, and I assume you're running it as though Jaylen Waddle plays, but that'll be obviously I'll be doing a show tonight after inactives come out, so I'll have a little bit more information then. But as of right now, we're playing it as though Waddle is in. How much are you getting to of Tyreek Hill?
More than I would like. I have 39% Hill at flex, which is pretty much in line with where the field's projected, but I am 2x at captain at 20%. And I don't mind that. Like, it's obviously risky because, again, like, it's just so easy for Miami to no-show here. But if they don't, who they're producing through. And I made the same case on my show Sunday morning, and like, it sort of happened because Miami was actually pretty productive last week. They just didn't run that many plays. On a per play basis, they were great. Like, you're expecting them to throw at a high rate. You're expecting a large percentage of those targets to be going to Achane, to Hill, and to Waddle, and to nobody else. So if Miami does just show up for this game and make it relatively competitive and score some points, there's a good chance Tyreek Hill has a good game. He went over 100 yards last week, I believe. It could have been a really big game. Tua missed him open at the end of the game for a huge play. So I think that it's just sort of, it doesn't feel good clicking these guys, because it is so like in the front of your head how disappointing this Miami offense has been over the last year plus 2 games. But it is still a high upside spot in terms of talent and throwing the ball to 3 people. So I am okay getting, over the field on Hill at captain, just hoping Miami shows up for this game. He still has like 0.25 targets per route run through the first 2 games so far this season. And also keep in mind, if you're looking at the raw number of targets for either Hill or Waddle, or routes run for Hill or Waddle, not only has Miami run an unsustainably low number of plays through 2 games, but Hill and Waddle both went to the sideline in week 1 with injuries. So last week is a lot more indicative, I think, of the route participation that you should expect compared to week 1 when they were both artificially low because of injury.
I mean, that's not artificially low for Jaylen Waddle, though. That's just the expectation that he's going to get hurt and go to the sideline at some point during every single game. That's a good note on Hill and Waddle. Also, Taron Johnson out for the Bills, which theoretically he's the slot corner for the Bills. Tyreek Hill, 42% slot rate so far this year. Maybe benefits from the absence of Taron Johnson. But yeah, he's just super involved. And Hill not somebody that I've generally been super in on in DFS and best ball, because just vibes based, it feels so off there. But we saw last week, like, even with bad vibes, doesn't really matter. Like, the team wants to win, they're going to throw it to their best player, and he is their best player. So yeah, still pretty involved here. Waddle,
when you compare it to best ball, like best ball, there is, I think, a very high, by the time we get to the end of the season, Tyreek Hill is like living with Antonio Brown risk.
Right, exactly.
He's not this week. Like, he's there this week.
Yeah, exactly. He's there. We know he's playing. He could, again, like Antonio Brown, leave in the middle of the game. No, that would be pretty surprising.
Before the game.
Right. We have seen that. But yeah, the expectation is that he will be playing tonight, playing a full game. So he looks good. Looks good in this matchup. Benefits from Teron Johnson being out. Jaylen Waddle, again, coming in with an injury and seems to leave every single game with an injury now. I think even if he does play, re-aggravation risk is a little bit higher for Jaylen Waddle. He's a pretty scary click for me today. How much are you getting to of Jaylen Waddle? Actually, let me pull up your projections. So you've got him projected for 27% flex ownership, 3% cap ownership.
Pretty similar to what's happening with Hill. I'm pretty close to the field at flex. I have 32%, but I am over the field with 11% at captain. And I think it's just, again, when you think about, how the different ways the game can go, $8,800 Jaylen Waddle getting plenty of targets, 0.21 targets per route run so far this season. Obviously, in any given game can get significantly more than that. He's talented. There is a high ceiling for him, even if it comes with risk. So, on a single game slate, getting him at 3% owned just seems really low. If that were to bump to 5-6%, then I assume my captain exposure comes back down to like 7 or 8 or something like that. But I do like the upside that comes with him, even though there is admittedly a ton of risk there as well.
Somebody in chat says that Teron is actually questionable, which I'm double checking that. For some reason, I was thinking he was out. Yeah, you're right. He is questionable. So Teron Johnson might play, so we might not get that benefit for Tyreek Hill. Again, we'll know that before the game starts. But we do have Ed Oliver and Matt Milano are already out for the Bills. But yeah, that's a good note. Appreciate that. Any other? I mean, so we're playing it as though Jaylen Waddle is in. I think Malik Washington, NWI potential plays regardless. I mean, we can look at their metrics so far on the season. NWI 24.7% route participation. It's actually Malik Washington would probably be the next best option out after Hill and Waddle. Malik Washington 64.4% route participation, 7 targets through 2 games. And then Nick Westbrook-Akine 24.7% route participation, 3 targets through 2 games. How much are you getting to of the tertiary receivers on the Dolphins? You got Malik Washington projected for 30% flex ownership, 1% captain ownership. NWI just 3% flex ownership, 0% captain ownership.
Yeah, so with Washington, I think really regardless of Waddle's status, he looks good at 3,200. I have 37% at flex. I have 3.5% at captain with Waddle projected in. We've seen around 60% route participation so far from Washington. He's somebody that they will use, in their shorter passing game, kind of, aside from Achane. But one thing that's interesting to me that I haven't really seen mentioned, I don't think, is he's kind of been their backup running back this year. Through the first 2 games, 14% rushing market share for Malik Washington is actually higher than Ollie Gordon's 11 or 12%. Not saying that necessarily that continues, but 8% rushing market share week 1, 20% last week. They're getting the ball in his hands, which is really nice for a $3,200 player on a showdown slate. He is, I think, pretty locked in as that third receiver as well, regardless of what happens with Waddle. When you look at Westbrook-Akine, when you look at D. Eskridge, potentially, those guys are going to be really impacted by the status of Waddle. They are guys that you saw with relatively high route participation week 1 when both of Hill and Waddle were banged up. And then week 2, came back to earth. You were around 20 to 25% on NWI last week. You were sub 10% on Eskridge. So those are guys that I think if Waddle is in, you're looking at as weird shit happens on a showdown slate. Yes, you can play them, particularly NWI. We know the type of potential touchdown equity he gives you based on what he's done in the past, even if he's not a heavily involved receiver overall. But you need Waddle to be out to actually be projecting either of those guys for any sort of real workload. And if Waddle's out, I do think you get a bump for Washington, obviously. But I think he's just kind of locked in as playable anyway.
Yeah, he's already getting, 7 touches through 2 games is not too bad. Yeah, 4 rushing attempts, averaging 8 yards per carry. Good for him. I had not seen that with Malik Washington. That's a good note. Yeah, I think I agree. Malik Washington and NWI in play either way. I don't know that I get to D. Eskridge. Has he touched the ball yet? I guess he has 2 touches on the year. So I guess maybe borderline, just like a hope for a touchdown type play. Yeah. We can see target share. higher target share in week 1. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So both Hill looks great. Waddle looks good if he's healthy. Washington looks playable regardless. Would get a little bit of bump if Waddle is out. And then if Waddle is out, then Nick Westbrook-Achane looks certainly better. D. Eskridge looks better. Everybody becomes a little bit more playable there. On the Bills side, so this is a tough one for me with Keon Coleman seemingly ascending this year to be the wide receiver 1 here. I'm not sure if I totally buy it yet. There was also some of the Twitter doctors that I read, not Jesse Morse, other Twitter doctors were saying he expected a dip for 4 to 6 weeks for Khalil Shakir, which we're still only in week 3, so maybe still a dip in production expected. But I would think it just like every week gets a little bit better. Like he from his high ankle sprain just becomes slightly healthier. But so far on the season, we can look at the advanced receiving here. Keon Coleman, 72.3% route participation, has 14 targets through 2 games. Khalil Shakir, same exact route participation, 7 targets through 2 games. Josh Palmer, 66.3% route participation, 7 targets. Dalton Kincaid, I guess we'll get to the tight ends, but as you can see, it's pretty spread out. You don't have anybody running 90+% of the routes. Nobody's getting 10 targets a game. It's kind of gross here, but also worth noting, Keon Coleman was, I believe he was shadowed by Sauce Gardner in the last game. I guess I did not double check that, but that was the expectation, at least, that he was going to be shadowed by Sauce Gardner. So the targets came down. Anyway, ultimately we have Keon Coleman coming in at 39% flex ownership, 8% captain ownership. Khalil Shakir, 29% flex ownership, 7% captain ownership. Josh Palmer, 24 and 2. How much are you getting to of the Bills starting receivers?
I'm a little surprised that I'm not getting to more, and maybe it's just an ownership projection thing. But I was actually a little concerned that because looking at the way that we have Buffalo projected right now, and I am going to dig into it a bit more after the show, but with the baseline projections for Buffalo right now, we actually have Coleman projected ahead of Shakir in terms of fantasy points, which is not the norm in the industry, I don't think. I'm not necessarily upset with it, but it's definitely something that is different. You know, they're close, but we have Coleman ahead. He's getting more targets. He's run more routes so far. So I was actually expecting to get to a lot of Coleman, but I'm not. I have 16% at flex. I have 7% at captain. That's pretty close to the field's ownership at captain, but it's considerably lower at flex. Similarly, I'm around the field at flex on Josh Palmer, actually over at captain. So he's the only Buffalo receiver that I guess I'm over on right now. I'm around half the field at flex on Shakir. I don't have him at captain. I have 4% Tyrell Shavers, who's 2% owned, but that's obviously just like a throw in. So I'm not getting a ton of Buffalo at flex right now, receivers that is. I wouldn't be upset if that changed. But one thing I will point out too that I think is really interesting is week 1. Like when you think about Buffalo's offense, you think about not only the spread out targets in the passing game, but also that, generally they don't have like a really condensed route participation for most of their receivers. And week 1, one of the things that really stood out was that Shakir ran like 85 to 90% of routes, but Coleman was 90 plus. Palmer was at 75, and you didn't really have much from Elijah Moore. You didn't have much from Shavers, which is obviously less surprising. But last week you had it a lot more spread out. You were back to around 55% from Shakir, 60 to 65% for Coleman, 65% for Palmer. You had Moore run 41%. You had Shavers run 31%. So that was kind of more in line with the kind of spread out Bills expectations. So I'm curious to see kind of what they do going forward. Obviously, more competitive games, you probably get a little bit more for the main guys as well. But that is something to kind of keep in mind that matters not only on the top end, but I'm not getting to like much Elijah Moore at 3,600. But you could make the case that if he's going to run 40% of routes more often than he's going to run 10% of routes, that he would be kind of an interesting play too. So I'm really just kind of interested to see what Buffalo actually does with their route participation, but I am bullish in Coleman in general. Part of that probably is because I want to be like, I want him to step up as the guy in Buffalo, just because it makes sense. Like if anybody's going to do it, it's probably him. So I'm bullish on him partly just because I want to be, but I'm not getting a ton of him right now, but I do like the role that we've seen from him through the first couple of weeks, and same for Josh Palmer.
So I'm just going to look through because it was, I think, a blowout in week 2 with the Jets. So I wanted to see, I'm going to sort by name here and see if they came down later in the game. So in the second quarter, Josh Palmer 64%, first quarter 67%, fourth quarter for Josh Palmer 67%, third quarter 50%. Keon Coleman was interesting, not how I thought. Keon Coleman in the first quarter just 33%. I mean, that's just 3 routes, but yeah, I guess that's 3 out of 9. In the third quarter, 37.5. So it was in the second quarter, he ran 90.9% route participation, otherwise pretty low. Very, very interesting. So it was not a result of the blowout, as far as I can tell here. Just looking at splits by quarter, it seems that it was, even in the first quarter, not running many routes. Just the second quarter, Keon Coleman running a lot of routes. And Khalil Shakir, 67% in the first quarter, 55% in the second quarter, 50% in the third, and then just 33% in the fourth.
What was the first and second quarter usage for Moore and Shavers?
Good question. So Moore, second quarter, 27%. First quarter, 56% for Elijah Moore.
To me, this kind of reads as we need more information, see what they do this week. But the way I have it projected right now is basically for the main guys to run less than they did week 1 and more generally than they did last week. And then the more Shavers to be more involved in week 1, but less than last week. I think that's without, inside information. That's kind of just the natural way to approach it. There's nothing from that data, I guess, that makes me look at it and say, oh, we should definitely just be projecting 90% routes for Coleman and Shakir and Moore and Shavers to just not be on the field.
Right.
It still seems very muddy, which for Showdown becomes interesting.
Right. Somebody asks, is Curtis Samuel out? Has he been active?
He's been inactive the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So he's probably going to be inactive again, would be my expectation if everybody's healthy.
Yeah. If he's active, then obviously it changes things. But chances are if he's active, it means one of the other guys is inactive.
Right. Right. Yeah. Interesting to look at. My instinct is that Keon Coleman is going to be higher owned than expected, and that Khalil Shakir is going to be lower owned, because I think a lot of people are expecting and hoping for the big breakout for Keon Coleman this year. I guess maybe there are equal number of people hoping against it. I don't know, but I thought this was worth noting. I'm not much of a looking at coverage guy, at least this early in the season. I don't think it's particularly meaningful because, we've talked about in the past, they could just change their coverages based on who they're playing. But Khalil Shakir last year had the 3rd highest separation score in the NFL against cover 2 defense, with players with a minimum of 100 routes. Dolphins have played cover 2 at the 2nd highest rate in the league this year, so there's a reason to potentially be bullish on Khalil Shakir. Still elite this year, but it is also worth noting that Coleman has been even better this year against cover 2, which maybe with them both playing so well against cover 2, maybe the Dolphins run it less this week. I don't know, but I thought that was somewhat notable that for the past 2 years, Shakir has been elite against cover 2, and that is something that the Dolphins have played a lot so far this year, but still 30% of the time. So not like they're playing it 80% of the time or anything like that. Still going to be a small sample, but maybe just one more reason to consider playing Khalil Shakir, which is sort of my instinct anyway. I don't know. To me, it's just we have too small of a sample size this year to really want to change my priors too much.
I mean, my biggest issue with Shakir so far is he's getting targeted less frequently than Dawson Knox in terms of targets per route. But I mean, I think from taking a step back and not, and just thinking about the Bills in general, in any one game sample for the Bills, and this is kind of why they're such an interesting showdown team. The answer, I think, is just who the fuck knows? It could be Shakir. We don't even have to worry about the long-term outlook of Shakir versus Palmer versus Coleman and get into that. You could know with absolute certainty that by the end of the season, Khalil Shakir is wide receiver 1, Coleman is 2, Palmer's 3, whatever. And the answer tonight would still be they all look fine. Probably play whichever one's getting less ownership than the others. Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern I would have right now is just that, you look at targets per route run, Coleman's at 0.23, Palmer's at 0.22, Kincaid's at 0.21, Cook's at 0.18. These guys are all very similar, which is what you expect from Buffalo. And then Shakir's coming in at 0.15. And he's not somebody that is giving you a ton of big play upside. He's not giving you a ton of touchdown upside. His value in DFS usually is he's getting targeted a lot and he's getting a lot of catches.
Right. They've schemed him up in the past quite a bit, which, yeah, exactly. It is very much volume based. But I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see that volume come back. It is sort of the reason that I'm I think that he's the one who would be, maybe he's not more likely than Coleman. Like, I'm trying to think who would be the most likely, who has the best odds of like being targeted 10 times in a game. And I think it's still Khalil Shakir, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe I need to adjust my priors faster, but I think I'm going to be playing more of Shakir than the field tonight. Have some time to adjust if I get a different instinct going in by tonight. But as of right now, I think I'm inclined to play more of Khalil Shakir and assume that he's still going to be getting the majority of the targets. But regardless, they're both pretty fairly priced. Shakir at 6,800, Coleman at 6,600, if I'm remembering right. So seem like strong enough plays. Anything else on receivers?
No, I already mentioned the Elijah Moore stuff.
Yep. All right, let's talk tight ends. The Dolphins, man, it's so Darren Waller is out tonight. Saw somebody ask that already. So we've got Tanner Conner and Julian Hill. Tanner Conner projected for 15% ownership, Julian Hill for 1% ownership. What are we doing? Are you going to be playing any of the Dolphins tight ends?
Unfortunately. I have right now 35% Connor at flex. I have 6% Hill. So technically over on both of them. Connor is $600 less than Hill, which is why you're seeing that ownership difference and also exposure difference. So far this season in the 2 games without Waller, Connor running more routes than Hill, 58%, depending on where you look. Week 1, 54%. Week 2, Hill was at 42 and 31 respectively. So in each game, you've had more route participation from Connor. He's so far this season been targeted on, I believe, 0.11 routes. Yeah, 0.11 targets per route run for Connor, 0 through 2 games for Hill. So you certainly can play Julian Hill in the sense of maybe this is the week he catches one or gets one thrown to him, period. But obviously, like so far, Connor has been the lead guy out of the 2. Not that is a super big role, but he's sub 1K.
Yeah, he not a great role, but one of the better, maybe the best sub 1K player, certainly up there as far as that. He did not so he was better in week 1 than week 2. I think he got 4 targets, all of them in week 1, 0 targets in week 2. So that's not ideal, not trending in the right direction. This is route share. But I think that's just going to be something that is noisy week to week. I don't think that he's like done getting targets just because he didn't in week 2. Seems like a strong option. So sorry, how much do you say you're getting of Tanner Conner?
35.
And you say you're getting any Julian Hill?
6.
Okay. So you're over the field on both. Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I don't know. Tanner Conner, I had not heard of him before. I looked him up. I was like, oh, he's 27. He's been in the league for 3 years. Like, where was this guy the past 3 years? I don't know. Seems fine. I'd say like better than a backup tight end play. Like we talk about you probably want him if he scores a touchdown. Otherwise, you won't. I think he's like slightly better than that because he's running over 50% routes. Yeah. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah. He's not. Yeah. He's running routes at a slightly higher rate than somebody that like Cade Stover when he's backing up Schultz or something like that.
Right. All right, and then on the Bills side, of course, we've got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Kincaid projected for 21 and 1% ownership in the captain. Dawson Knox 23 in the flex, 1% in captain. Interesting to see how close they are in projected ownership here. Are you getting to much of Kincaid or Knox?
I'm a little below the field, but close on Kincaid. I'm not really getting to Knox, which I don't love, and I do want to just kind of dig into why am I not getting more Buffalo in general, but for Kincaid, I have 13% at flex. I have 1 to 2% at captain. So I'm below the field, but nothing crazy. I only have 1% Knox right now. My guess is that it's just I am either paying down for Connor for tight end value primarily, or even for Hill to be contrarian and get tight end value. And then I'm just, prioritizing getting to other guys. So I'm guessing it's an ownership thing on Knox. He's run like 45 to 50% routes through the first couple of weeks. He's been targeted 0.17 times per route run, has 6 targets overall. I think he's fine at his salary. He's just not one that's in my lineups right now.
Yep. In total, according to fantasy points, 42% route participation for Dawson, Knox, 57% for Dalton, Kincaid, closer than people were probably hoping for with those
Kincaid
two.
also got banged up in one game.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Which could have been impacted that some.
Yeah. Yeah, that certainly would play a role there. Let's see, we can look at, did it change route participation week over week?
I could be completely misremembering, but I feel like I remember a blue tent for Kincaid.
I mean, he might have gone to the blue tent, but still ended up with similar route participation. But also, like they've played in 2 completely different games. One really competitive game that was high scoring with the Ravens, and then one where it was complete blowout. So yeah, hard to read too much into these numbers.
Which also, I guess, since you mentioned it, going back, the same thing I was saying about the Dolphins and the raw numbers for targets and routes, etc., being unsustainably low. The Bills ran like 77 plays against the Ravens or something.
Right.
So whatever, he's been targeted X number of times. Like, this is just why it's always going to be better to use percentages and rates. But don't get too excited by any raw numbers that came out of game 1 offensively for the Bills.
Well, what's funny is they still have really, really low raw numbers. Like even with that number of plays, their leader in targets is 14 with Keon Coleman through 2 weeks. So
yeah, and I think wasn't it like 10 week 1?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then he was shadowed by Sauce Gardner in week 2, so fewer targets. At least I think he was. I need to double check if that actually came to fruition, but that was the expectation that he was going to be shadowed by Sauce Gardner. All right, let's move on. Talk about defenses, kickers, who I think are pretty interesting this year in general. And on this slate, I think defenses and kickers are going to be some pretty strong plays. We can take a look at the ownership. So you've got for the Dolphins, we'll just do them all at once. Dolphins, Riley Patterson, you have projected for 15% ownership in the flex, 0% a captain. Dolphins defense, just 3%. Man, I was not excited about the Dolphins defense, but 3% flex ownership is pretty interesting. On the Bills, we've got Prater at 29% ownership and 1% at flex. Bills defense 13% and 3% at flex. Do you have, is anybody standing out to you in your exposures for Bills or Dolphins defenses or kickers?
No, pretty much around the field there, which I'm fine with. Barely have the Dolphins, have the Bills at 19% at flex, 1.5 at captain. When you think about the matchups, like obviously it's a shitty spot for Miami in general. They're not good. The Bills are very, very good. But the problem for the Bills, like obviously they have the better matchup in terms of you'd rather face a statuesque quarterback in Tua than Hill. But the same potential issue that you run into with the Dolphins offensive players is actually a negative for the Bills defense too. If the Dolphins offense is never on the field, then your upside for the defense is capped. Like it's, their median projection goes up a bit because they can't lose points, but you do lose sack opportunities, defensive touchdown opportunities, etc. if you're just never on the field.
True. Yeah. It's interesting. I also think that like Tua has been sort of turnover prone, which is obviously good for the Bills defense. I think I like them better than you do. It sounds like they are, what's their price tag? Bills defense, $5,800. So they're pretty expensive. But yeah, 13% ownership. I think I do like them a little bit better than you do just because Tua has been pretty turnover prone throughout his career. I think he has 3 interceptions already this year.
To be clear, like when I point out the play thing, that's not how we're projecting it or I'm projecting it or anything. Like, it's still like, yeah, I don't think Miami runs quite as many plays as they did last year, probably, but they are going to get back to normal amounts of plays you would expect. But I'm just, pointing it out as like the same reason that people are going to be hesitant to get to Waddle, Hill, etc. Does actually to some extent apply to the defense also. But, it's being projected as they run a normal number of plays and the Bills defense is normal.
Right. Okay. Good to know. How about the kickers? Are you far off with any of the kickers? Prater at 30% total ownership here.
I mean, I guess technically below the field on Prater because he's getting 29 and I have 16. But I have basically 16% of both of them.
And this is using the Run the Sims numbers, because I found like every time I use Run the Sims and leave it, the first run I get I slam the kickers, like get them all over my lineups. So you're using the numbers and not getting into a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe a unique slate from that perspective. I was looking at, I wanted to test the hypothesis of more field goals this year. Wanted to make sure that it's true, and it certainly felt true on island games, just based on the new kickoff rules, maybe leading to more field goals. It has been up slightly so far this year. So last year, teams on average kicked 2.04 field goals per game. So far in 2025, teams average 2.2 field goals per game. So just up slightly in terms of field goals per game. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up even more over time. But yeah, so far a slight uptick in field goals, nothing too crazy. And Sandham says that he loves Miami kicker Riley Patterson. Did you say how much you're getting to of Riley Patterson?
16, same as
okay,
Raider,
right, with the field. Yeah.
Are you getting to your boy Jackson Hawes? I didn't hear you mention him at tight end.
Jackson Hawes is my boy.
Didn't you tell somebody to play him the week that he almost scored?
Oh, no, that was the one that, no, what I said was, I don't think I'm going to get to this guy. I don't know who he is, but then somebody did play him and did well with him. So they had a different takeaway from whatever I said about him than I did. I don't think I'm going to get to, let's see yeah, he's run 6 routes on the season, 2 target, like classic backup tight end, probably fine to play. Not a priority for me at all. Are you getting to any?
I don't think so. I just happened to see his name and remembered how much you like him.
Yeah. No, it was not that I loved him. Yeah, I played. I don't think I played him at all. Or maybe what happened is I ran the lineups and got a little bit of Jackson Hawes, so they saw that I got him, and they're like, "All right, well, if you're getting him, then he's probably a good play, even if you didn't say that you like him." So I'm guessing that's what happened and why somebody played him. Yeah, but I don't know yet if I'm going to get to any. Anything else? I think we've made it through all of the positions.
Somebody had asked me how much Tua I was getting with Ram and with Tyreek a captain, and who's the sacrificial lamb in those lineups. Most of my Tyreek captain lineups have Tua. I don't really know who they're kicking out. I don't have an easy way to eyeball that. It seems like a lot of them don't have Josh Allen, but also I was below the field on Josh Allen in general. So I don't know if that has to do with Tyreek captain specifically, or if it just has to do with Allen ownership or whatever. But I did have the majority of my Tyreek captain lineups do have Tua, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else? Any other notes on the game, Adam?
No, obviously Jaylen Waddle is the very big one.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Jaylen Waddle plays. I will, of course, be breaking down the slate again about 85 minutes prior to lock. After inactives come out, give myself 5 minutes to prepare, and then I'll be going live 85 minutes or so before the game starts tonight. You can find me right here on the Flannelverse channel. Please do make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Like the video, it's always helpful. And then if you want to get notified when I go live, hit that little notification bell as well. So yeah, you'll be able to find me here again tonight. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to get out of here, and I'll see you later.